This special feature brought to you by Inspiration on Demand. Be inspired.
Every day, religious Jews recite these words in prayer. I believe in perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, and even though he delays, yet every day I'll wait for him, believing that he'll come. Jews have been waiting for the coming of the Messiah for 2,000 years, and still he hasn't arrived. Or has he? There are religious Jews living right here in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that believe that their spiritual leader is the Messiah, even though he died in 1994. Some even say he rose from the dead. Could it be true? Everyone longs for peace and justice. Everyone desires an end of war and hatred. The Bible speaks of a day when the wolf will lie down with the lamb and the lion with the goat. It speaks of a day when the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. It speaks of a time when nation will not take up sword against nation and people will not learn war anymore. Jews call this the Messianic era. It'll be inaugurated by the Messiah himself, a descendant of the ancient King David. But how will we recognize him? What will he look like when he comes? And is it possible in our fervent desire to see the Messiah come that we could put our trust in the wrong person?
Dr. Brown brought his cameras to the streets of New York City with one question in mind. Do you think Jesus is the Messiah?
I believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah.
I also believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah.
I think he was a great man, and he was misinterpreted, in my opinion. But it's only my opinion.
I do believe that he's already come. I do believe he was a man on this earth. I do believe that he saved a lot of people. I do think he was the Messiah. However, I do think there is going to be another Messiah that's going to come. Who that's going to be, no person on this world knows.
I'm not sure there is a Messiah. Come or not to come, I'm not that certain of it. That's part of our Jewish mythology.
I believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Yes, I do. I believe he's the Messiah.
That's a superstar. Jesus Christ is a superstar. Who hasn't heard of Jesus Christ? You know what I'm saying? It's the household name. Jesus is everything everybody say he is, but not what they fight for him to be. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think personally. Kind of deep, too deep.
I believe that he has come and he will come again.
Yeah, he has, and he will come back.
I think it would be a great thing if Jesus Christ will come as the Messiah. I would love it.
Think about it. As we cry out for the coming of the Messiah, especially in times of intense suffering, it's all too easy for us to put our trust in the wrong person. There are some Hasidic Jews here in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, who believe that their rabbi, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, commonly known as the Rebbe, really is the Messiah, even though he died before inaugurating the Messianic era. Others say no matter how great a figure he was, he couldn't be the Messiah. Let's take a look at one of the most famous false messiahs in Jewish history before we examine the messianic credentials of the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson. The story begins with a man who became known as the mystical Messiah, Shabbatai Tzvi, born in Smyrna in 1626. According to the legend, he was born on the 9th day of the month of Av, which, according to Jewish tradition, was to be the birth date of the Messiah. He seemed to be quite an unusual character. In fact, it seems that he was a manic depressive. He would have these terrible bouts of emotional torment and depression, only to rise into these glorious heights of ecstasy and joy. And it was during those times of ecstasy he claimed to receive special revelations from God. At that time, many of the Jews lived in extreme poverty, and there was also severe persecution. Sometimes whole Jewish communities were wiped out. There was also an increase in Jewish mysticism, giving rise to speculation about unseen spiritual things. It seemed like the time was ripe for a man like Shabbatai. Even his own struggle seemed to point to his battle with demonic powers. He also had a prophet, Nathan of Gaza, who claimed in 1665 that he received a revelation that Shabbatai was actually the Messiah. And he began to proclaim all of his miracles, and the following, even among the rich and the poor, even among some rabbis, began to rise. So there was a wave of momentum, and Shabbatai thought this is the time. He was going to go to Constantinople and announce to the Sultan that he was the Messiah, ordering the Sultan to bow down to him. Instead, he was put in jail. He was tolerated for a while and finally given an ultimatum. And the ultimatum was simply this: convert to Islam or die. Amazingly, Shabbatai converted to Islam. And not just him, many of his followers also did the same thing. They converted to Islam. You say, how in the world could that happen? Well, there's a Talmudic tradition that says that the Messiah will come when the world is perfectly righteous or perfectly wicked. And because of the fact that the world was not worthy to receive him in its righteousness, it had to become wicked. So he was going to lead the apostasy into Islam and usher in the final wickedness and hence inaugurate the Messiah. And what's really wild is to this day, there are followers of Shabbatai who are living secret lives among the Muslims. At least it was attested well into the 20th century. How in the world could people be so deceived? The last 50 years, Messianic expectation has been on the rise. The horrors of the Holocaust, which were almost supernatural in their dimension, caused many Jews to say, how long? And then the rebirth of the modern state of Israel gave hope. Maybe the era of redemption is coming near. Even today, it seems the whole world is focused on Israel. There's controversy over Jerusalem. There are calls for the extermination of the Jews. And then there are extreme natural disasters and the threat of a nuclear holocaust. Seems like the whole world is shaking. But something very special happened in 1991. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, announced to his followers, I've done everything I can to bring in the era of Mashiach, the era of Messiah. I'm handing over the mission to you. It's up to you now to bring in the Messianic era, to bring in the Messiah. And they began to wonder, could he be the man? Many of his followers were sure, this is King Messiah.
Not many Hasidic Jews in Crown Heights were willing to share their comments on camera. The man you're about to see spoke with Dr. Brown, but his interview was abruptly ended by a senior member of the community.
So the question is, there was belief that Rebbe could be Mashiach.
Right.
And is it possible that he is Mashiach? Is he the Messiah? Okay. So you can go ahead.
Right. So, again, I think the first thing we have to understand is, from a Jewish point of view, what is Mashiach? Mashiach is a Jewish leader, somebody who is completely dedicated to God's teaching.
Is he divine or just a human being?
Human being,
okay.
Absolutely human being. And we have actually a code written by Maimonides. He was in the 11th century. He tells us what to expect in a Messianic leader, and it talks about a human being.
So the Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Malachim, 11th chapter.
Chapter 11. Right.
Okay.
It says very clearly what to expect. Somebody who is completely dedicated to God's teaching, who upholds the teaching, who repairs any missing links of things that have been forgotten in the teaching, who brings the people closer to observance, and then we can begin to look at that person as a leader.
So if there's a Jewish leader who himself is a holy, righteous person that is starting to bring Jews back to Torah observance, and it's happening more and more and more, maybe he could be.
That's the first thing. And then it says that he fights wars on behalf of the Jewish people. And he
does it have to be physical wars?
No, not necessarily physical wars, but spiritual wars, but sometimes, certainly battles.
Okay.
It takes on contentious issues and pushes to resolve them in the appropriate way. And maybe sometimes literally wars too. Remember that Israel itself has been engaged in many wars. Mm-hmm. The Rebbe has been front and center in sending his people to encourage the troops on the front, in giving ideas to the political leadership and the military leadership about which way